Well, welcome to our next tight topic. This tight topic is going to be on transformation tools. Transformation tools, again, another important tool in Photoshop because you're combining pictures sometimes. You're trying to get whatever the element is from one picture into a position on the other picture. You might have to make it bigger or smaller, or turn it around, or flip it, or warp it, or whatever you need to do to get it into the position you'd like to get into. And that's what these tools do. There are a lot of transformation tools. Some of them are more basic than others. I'm going to split this session into two. This first session will be the basic transformation tools. The second session will be the more advanced tools. Okay, let's get started. As you can see, I've got a logo here of the Photo Club sitting on top of a background. I'll just use this logo to transform it using some of the basic transformation tools. Before we get started, as we get started, let's talk about where these tools are. Edit, go to Edit, and then in this area here, you see the transformation tools. I'm not going to talk about the puppet warp. I will talk about the puppet warp here probably, but not the perspective warp. That's a little bit more advanced. I'll talk about free transform and transform. But like I said, before we get started, you see free transform with the shortcut Control or Command T is the same as this move tool up here. So if I were to select the move tool, you'll see there's little handles here that show up around the logo. These handles allow me to do different things. So you'll see the little arrow, as my cursor goes around, you'll see the little arrow turns into two-way arrow there, which allows me then to rotate the image. I can put that little arrow, just as long as I keep it outside, I can put that arrow anywhere and rotate the image, okay? So that's the rotation part of this thing. And anytime I do some changes in transformation, you get this symbol up here. One is to cancel what I did, cancel the transformation, or to commit the transformation. So if I want the logo to be tilted like that, I would commit it. If I would say, yeah, forget it, I don't want to do that, I would cancel it. So I'll cancel it for now. Okay, so that's the move tool. If I were to go back to Edit, Free Transform, the same thing happens. Okay, I've got the ability to rotate. Now, once if I don't want to rotate, I can come in and, as long as I'm touching one of those handles on the edge, those little white blocks or handles, I can now see the arrows changed into a two-way arrow. That two-way arrow allows me to push in and out on the box. Okay, and you'll see it's keeping its aspect ratio no matter where I do this. And that's because I haven't held down the Shift key. The Shift key allows me to change the aspect ratio. So without the Shift key, it keeps its aspect ratio. With the Shift key, I can change it. Okay, so with the Shift key, I can do a lot to the aspect ratio of these things. Without the Shift key, it keeps the same aspect ratio. Okay, and again, commit or not commit. There's one other shortcut key that you should know. I just showed you moving it without the Shift key or with the Shift key, and how it keeps its aspect ratio. You'll know as I hold one handle, like this top right handle, that it anchors on the opposite angle, on the handle here. So if I were to hold this top handle here and push down, it anchors on these opposite handles, okay? But suppose I want it to anchor in the middle. I would then hold the Option key down, and now it anchors in the middle and changes size, but stays where it is, okay, right in the middle. So the Option key makes it anchor in the middle. No Option key anchors on the other side. And of course, Shift Option then makes it anchor in the middle, and I can change the aspect ratio. So the Shift and Option keys are important in using transformation. And once you've finished, of course, you either commit it or cancel it. I'll cancel it for now. So we're back to where we started, okay? So that's the Edit, Free Transform, and that's the one you're going to use most of the time. It's the same as the Move tool up here, okay? Let's try something a little different. Let's go down to the Transform tool right below that, okay? The Transform tool just below that has a lot of options in it here, okay? And some of these are the same as what we just talked about with Free Transform. Scale, for example, is like Free Transform, but without the rotate. You see, I go out here outside, nothing happens. There's no little arrows that shows I can rotate, but I can scale just like I did, holding down the Option keys and the Shift keys and everything else, just like I did before. It works just the same, except it's just scale. okay, and not anything else. If I go down to Edit, Transform, let me get that, Edit, Transform, Rotate, then it's just about rotation and it's not about scale. See, the arrows now don't change as I come in and touch the image itself. They don't change into a scaling. They just do the rotate. So I can rotate. It seems like a little bit of overkill. Why did Adobe give me free transform and then they give me transform with scale and rotate, which is just what free transform is, except without the other little options. Okay, I'm not sure why that is. I can't explain it. But skew, distort, and perspective and warp are going to be different here. Okay, it's hard to explain exactly what the differences are as we do this, but let's look at them. Okay, here's skew, skewing. Now I can go around and take a point, and I can change the way this thing looks. Okay, you'll see everything else, all the other points are anchored, but I am taking this point and moving it around. Okay, if I take another point over here and move it around, I can do that. Okay, that's about all I can do. I can't make it bigger. I can't make it smaller. I can only skew it around. Okay, same thing here. If I go on the top, I can't make it bigger or smaller. It's basically the same size, but it's just skewing all over the place. So that's what skew will do. It's different than perspective, because you'll see in a perspective, if I changed one point down like that, the other point would come up and they would move in tandem. So that's skewing. Let's go to Edit, Free Transform. Transform. We did skew. Distort now is a little different than skewing. If I go and take one of these points here and start to move it, you'll see it tends to push the pictures a little differently than the other ones, the skew did. Again, it's still anchored. These other points are still anchored, and exactly what the difference is between the two is I couldn't tell you exactly, but I think they're very similar. What you do is you try one and then you try another as you try to nudge your object into position. Okay, Edit, Transform. We've seen skew and distort. Perspective is just like you think perspective would be. If I take one of these items here and push it back, the other one over here moves along in with it to give me a look of perspective, right? So it's just like a perspective warp. That's a nice tool to give perspective to something. Now it looks like it's leaning back and going off in the distance. Perspective warp, Edit, Transform, Perspective, and then warp itself. This is the most fun of these all and gives you the most the freedom or the most choice to do things. If I take a corner here and move it, okay, you can see it sort of folds it back. But you'll see as I do that, you'll notice these little lines come here. There's some other lines here. These allow me to do additional movements here. So I can really warp this thing into a nice position if I wanted to. Makes it look like a flag flying in the wind here. So you're given a lot of power with this particular tool. And then I can commit it or not commit it here. So that's the warp tool here, the warp tool. These down here do exactly what you might think. Rotate 180 degrees. Okay. So these tools down here below are doing exactly what you would think they would do. Flip horizontally. So you can do all sorts of goofy things here. Let me go back a couple. There is one more that I'll show you that is a little bit more advanced before we finish here and go on to the more advanced video next. I would go back to Edit, and instead of the free transform and transform, we've gone through these pretty well. I go into something called Puppet Warp. I'd rather use the warp down here. It's not as powerful as the Puppet Warp. The Puppet Warp is interesting if you really have to push and shove something into position. When you use Puppet Warp, it gives you a mesh like this. It's good if you're going to, you see the little icon turns into a pin. If I click on that, it anchors that point down. If I click on this, it anchors that point down. If I don't anchor a point, for example, let me just go back and take that pin off. If I don't anchor a point and let's say I want to start warping from this position here, then the whole thing just rotates around, right? I mean, you can, it's like chewing gum. It's nice to anchor another point down and maybe anchor the corners down if that's what I want to do. And now I can start moving this thing around into position. So I can say, take this point here and I can push it up here or pull it down. So it's a very elastic sort of feel that you can get some really strange things going on. But it's a matter of anchoring things down. You can anchor in the middle and start to create a different shape out of it. When you're trying to get things into little tight spots and things like it, it's a pretty powerful tool. So that's how the puppet warp works, and that's it for the simple, I guess, tools, the simple transform tools. The next video we're going to get into more complex tools and a lot more fun. So we'll get into to some of these things like perspective warp. We'll get into some tools that are over in some of the other areas over here for warping. Okay, enough for now.